been here before.
What a welcome.
Thank you.
You deserve it. Okay. Well, good afternoon.
Hi.
Let me sit down. Well, first of all, Roger, James, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your warmth also with us. It means a lot to us. So, well, and thank also to Fanny and Joel. ¿Dónde estás? Because, well, esto no habría sido posible sin vosotros. O sea que muchas gracias por esta oportunidad. Let's talk a bit about cinema, right?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, sure.
We could talk
what's better than that?
We could talk about fishing.
football.
Oh, fishing. Well,
Football, oh dear.
if you like, feel yourself at home. I mean, in front of you, you see it's a crowded house, and in front of you is the future of cinema.
Yes.
Exactly.
What?
It's exciting, yeah.
Yeah. What would you like to tell them?
Hurry up. we desperately need you.
Well, this is full of youngsters, 20-year-old people. Where were you at their age?
Probably in the pub.
You weren't thinking about cinema at that age?
No. When I was 20, well, I was at art college, wasn't I? 18 to 20. Yeah, I was at art college. I went to art college because my dad was like a builder, did painting and decorating, and so I worked with him on the building sites, and I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I was a bit of a mess. So I thought I liked drawing and painting. That's what I spent most of my time doing at school, and so I thought, yeah, art college. So my dad was gracious enough to allow me to go to art college, and that was my escape.
And when did filmmaking enter this equation or this horizon of future?
Maybe a couple of years ago, maybe.
Roger, you have to work with him, okay?
Sorry. No, it took a long time. I mean, because I love movies. I loved movies since I was very young. I mean, I was saying this morning, the first films I remember seeing were cartoons. I must have been like 4 or 5. My dad had a little projector, and you could rent cartoons from the local post office then. And I remember seeing Felix the Cat and Popeye the Sailor Man and stuff like that, and being transfixed by them. I mean, really. But then when I was at school, I grew up in a little seaside town in Devon, where it's a tourist town really, and fishing, but tourism as well. And in the winters there's nothing to do. And there was a little film society opened. And I thought, well, I'll go to the film society because it'll give me something to do after school in the evenings. And so I remember watching the most amazing films that I didn't understand, like last year at Marienbad, which I still don't understand. But also Peter Watkins' War Game and Godard's Alphaville, and all these amazing movies. And but I never connected it with anything I could do as a career. As I said, I went to art college, and then fellow student happened to say there's a film school opening up. The National Film School opened up in England under the Labour government.
What year are we talking about, more or less?
This would have been 1971, and I didn't get in the first year. I applied with my friend, neither of us got in. But I went to London, and I asked for an interview with the principal of the film school, Colin Young, and I asked him why I didn't get in. I was quite bold for somebody that was actually very insecure and quite shy, and he actually, one of his assistants, as I was leaving, said, apply next year, you'll get in. So I applied again the next year and got in, and then I mean, I think it was at film school I realised I had a chance to do something that would take my life in a different direction, and I behaved myself and concentrated.
And I'm going to make you now a tricky question. After 50 years on the job, do you think that filmmaking can be taught in a school?
Teach.
Beware what are you going to answer.
Yes and no.
Well,
What's the yes part? That's the one we are interested in.
I think what the film school gives you the opportunity is to try and be able also to fail, and not at a commercial prospect, and learn from something that you tried that didn't work, as opposed to doing that on a paying job. And I think that a lot of ideas can be given in film school, so it's up to the student to take them in or not.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I was a very shy person. I probably still am, really, but less as I was then. But film school really helped me communicate with other people. It inspired me. It gave me the opportunity to work on my own films. And then, having made my own films, other students saw what I'd done. They would hire me to shoot their films. So that's how I became a cinematographer rather than anything else, I suppose. But I think it gave me the opportunity, and it's like James says, you can screw up, but it's okay, but you can't professionally. That's hard.
And you
but
also
can you teach it? No, I think you can inspire people and allow them the space to find themselves. I don't think you can teach it, because that's sort of like presupposing there's a formula. You know, how do I like this room? Well, you do this. You know, I mean, there is no formula. You look at the great films through history, and they're all very different, made by very different people.
And actually, inspiring is harder to do than teaching. If you were just teaching math, you're just saying 2 and 2 equal 4. But in order to be a good film teacher, it's harder, because you need to know the students and understand how you can help them find that inspiration.
Yeah.
So don't quit
You tell
yet.
me.
So don't give up.
No, I've been doing this for 20 years now, so I'm trying to improve every year. No, but I was also interested in, but I think you also already answered that. So you haven't thought about teaching or in a film school, even part-time?
We have a website, and that's teaching. We have a podcast, that's teaching, and we do these Q&As. So since we never know where we're going to be in 6 months' time, that's the best that we can do.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. We were at the National Film School, you know, where I was. We were there a couple of weeks ago. You think about it. That would be really interesting. But I mean, I've still got a lot I want to do, you know, my own. So.
And what would be your first lesson to your students?
When I was at art college, right, I mean, I got turned on to still photography simply because this guy Roger Main, who's a great still photographer, came down and just taught for a couple of days. And he said straight off, he said, I can't teach you how to take photographs. Just all go out and take photographs. So there were like sort of 6 or 10 of us. And I hitchhiked to the coast, and I slipped on the beach and took a few photographs, brought them back, put them in the developer and all that, and we're all, you know, developing our own pictures, and then we put them on a wall and discuss them. And he said, I can't teach you, but we can talk about each other's work and discuss why we like something, what affects us and what doesn't. And that was a way of inspiring. You know, inspiring you to find something in yourself that meant something to you, and try and communicate that with somebody else, which is the essence of taking still photographs or making a movie, isn't it? You know.
So your first lesson would be to go out, take some photographs, and come back and share them.
Go and do it
with the others, and let's talk about them in community.
Find your eye. You know, what appeals to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. It sounds great.
It sounds
We're looking
great,
forward
doesn't it?
to
It's
see
not
you
easy.
here. Barcelona's a great city. Do you know that?
It's a lovely city, yeah. Can I go now and take?
Now about you, James. Where
Hmm.
were you at their age, and how did you came into filmmaking?
Well, I went to a university and studied something completely different, but with more because I knew it was something that I wouldn't do on my own, and I liked learning it, but didn't know what I was going to do. And while I was in university, I took worked on with some friends multimedia shows for freshman orientation, junior transfer orientation. But then we had one assignment. Well, the university asked us to do rape on campus, but not to say that it happened on campus. But of course, that was the whole point, because you had young people coming for the first time from very small towns, and they did need to know. So I figured the way to do it is to take the slides in landmarks in places that said, this is happening here, this is happening here, because it was a way that the university didn't realize we were saying that. And so to me, it showed me the power of visuals and how you could tell a story that way and get away with something, you know. And I realized I wanted to tell stories, so I came back to New York and actually started working in a film lab. And I was given the title of supervisor, more to organize things, but then that meant that when I was down in the lab, some guy from the bowels of the lab would come up to me and say, the CRI has Newton rings, should I put it back in the bath or remake it? And of course I didn't know what a CRI was, I didn't know what Newton rings were, but I would go to the head technician and say, tell me, and I learned all this technical stuff, and because I had the ability to communicate, which a lot of lab guys didn't, I ended up talking to the clients a lot of times, and after I left that, I did one post-production supervisor job, but then that was the same thing as being in the lab, but you were the customer, so you were always right, so it was a little better. But then I became a script supervisor and got into it and went from there.
And if you don't mind me asking, how did you meet?
On
I
a
met
movie.
on the film.
On a movie.
James
Yeah.
was scripting and I was shooting.
Yeah, on
Thunderheart.
Thunderheart, thank you.
I remember if you don't.
No. It just went out of my mind for just an
It's
instant.
better that way round, I tell you. Yeah.
And how does this Team Deakins work? What are the specific... I mean, we know about your work, obviously, but how about...
Well, we do it
how do you-
together.
yeah.
Yeah.
We do it together. We talk about it. We go into prep together. We talk about how we're going to accomplish it. I tend to work with the visual effects people who want everything shot against a blue screen, and then I talk them into a compromise, you know, because I know what Roger wants to do, and I find out from them why they want to do this, and talk to them about that. I talk to production. I do a lot of the meetings, and so it means Roger can focus on the lighting, and when he's on set, can focus on actually that scene. So we kind of work as one person,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you coordinate everything, don't you? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm on the set. I always operate as well as light, and you know, I mean, it's
Slightly busy.
I'm always on the set.
And people are afraid anyway to talk to him on the set because he's like so focused, and they know I can go up to him and just ask him quickly, and he can't yell at me.
No, we've also got, you know, we've worked over the years with a tight team of people, so we're all kind of like one family. Really. So it's it's been a great sort of.
And the other thing that I can do is
experience.
the digital workflow and keep an eye on the dailies, because I know what Roger's going for. I know what to look for, and then come back and talk to him about what I've just seen and things like that.
And strangely, I mean, really, it just sort of, our relationship morphed, because sometimes she was scripting on the same film
In
as
the
I was
beginning,
shooting in
yeah.
the beginning, and then she was doing more stuff at the same time. And then when digital finish and then digital capture came along, the process got more and more complicated. You wouldn't think so, but it has got more complicated, and that I think it just seemed to fit, and we like being together, so it worked pretty well.
And a lot of times too, when we were shooting a movie, they were prepping post on another one, so I had to talk to them and make sure that everything was set up and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
there were days when you'd be shooting a movie, and then they would set up a DI suite in a nearby hotel or something, or somewhere, office block or something. And at the end of a shooting day, you would go and start working on the finish for a previous film. It's all a bit easier now, but that was, yeah.
So I assume that you choose your projects together. I mean,
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, but
I mean, there's
you choose your projects. But I mean, I've worked so long with Joel and Ethan up until recently, and then, worked with Sam Mendes and then Denis. Well, you're not going to choose so much as know that if they ask us to do something, it's pretty well slam dunk. You're going to do it, really.
So there's not much of a choosing. I mean, that's simply
Well,
that
there's some films that
you are being chosen.
Yeah,
Well-
yeah, you build relationships with some people.
Yeah,
we're
but-
offered other things, and then you have to.
It is a choice.
Yeah, it is
and
a choice, even. Yeah.
there have been some other ones that we chose not to do.
Oh yeah.
And was the case that one of you wanted to do a project and the other one
No.
didn't?
Pretty
Or
much,
you get
no.
along? You get along.
Yeah.
No, we're very in sync about
Yeah, we're
what we
very
think of the world.
similar. Yeah.
Is there any director, dead or alive, which you would like to have worked with?
Yeah.
I assume, but can you tell me some names?
Well, I mean, the obvious ones. I mean, two are dead: Jean-Pierre Melville and Andrei Tarkovsky. But one is still alive and living in Paris.
Andrei
Zvigintsev.
Zvigintsev, who did Loveless and Leviathan.
Elena. I think he's the greatest living director, and I would say that to anybody I know and people I don't know. I think he's a real film director. And Joel Collins said the same to me one day. He said, of all the directors in the world, that guy knows how to direct a film.
Well, this was the beginning of this conversation, but obviously all of you are welcome to just to ask them any question at any time. You just raise your hand. We're just scheduled this in different subjects. You have different topics that we're going to cover, but you can raise your hand at any time. I mean, for instance, right now, is there any question to start with that you would like to ask?
There. No.
Oh,
You both. Either one.
Let's start with you.
Okay. It's kind of two questions in one. First of all, do you consider yourself to be a very creative person in terms of more technical or creative in your role as a cinematographer? And then, if you do consider yourself technical or creative, how has your relationship been with directors in terms of how restrictive they were with your creativeness and your creativity, and how much did they let you decide on what the project should look like, and how happy were you with the decisions?
It's a very broad question,
Yeah.
isn't it? No, come on. I mean, every film is so different. I think why I love the function. I mean, I love the creative side of the job, but I also love the technical side of the job. And you can't have one without the other. That's what's so interesting about it. But then every film is different, and working with the same director on different films can be a totally different experience. Imagine working with Sam Mendes on Jarhead and then Revolutionary Road. I mean, they couldn't be two more different movies. So your approach is very different. I mean, I don't really feel satisfied unless I feel I'm part of a collaboration. And there's certain directors that we've known that will say, we're here on a 50mm, this is what the shot is.
It's just not that interesting.
I don't feel
Yeah.
I would have a role there. It's not that I don't like them or their films. It's for me, I don't see I could help them because they know what they want to
But
do.
that's part of
So-
the. Oh, sorry.
No,
I
no,
didn't
it's-
mean-
no.
But that's part of the process of talking to the director before you take a movie. Is number one, seeing how they see the script and see if it meshes, but also getting the feeling of how much collaboration that they want. Because I think the worst feeling is being on a set and feeling you're just a pair of hands on the set.
Yeah, if you're just there to push a button and bounce a light off the ceiling, what's the point of that? It might look nice, but I mean, I didn't enter the film business. I entered the film business by luck, let's face it. But I didn't start enjoying shooting features, drama, without feeling that sense of collaboration with a team of people. And yeah, the director's a director, but you always want to feel part of that and being able to put a bit of yourself into it. And if I don't feel I'm doing that, I don't know why I would do it. I would go fishing, because the fishing's quite good these days.
You just give me a cue now, because that's a question I had here. Another tricky question. Do you prefer your directors to have technical knowledge of camera and lighting, or do you prefer them to not have
We
knowledge?
prefer them to have a vision.
Yeah, no,
Sure,
the main
of course.
what you really want from a director is passion.
Yeah.
Passion for the project they're doing. I mean, I've worked with directors where a director said to me early on, somebody I hadn't worked with, he said, I don't know anything about the camera lighting. You do that, I'm going to direct the actors. And you just tell me how we're going to lay a scene out and block it. And, you know, the other extreme that I've worked with is Joel and Ethan, who, I mean, sometimes I've been involved in the storyboard process and sometimes not. But by the time we come to shoot, there's a whole set of storyboards. And it's very, you know, intensively worked out in pre-production. But you can still come on a set and say, yeah, but if we just did that, we don't need all those shots. And something will change completely on the day. Not often, because they're so brilliant in their kind of conceptualization of their material that their shots are usually, why would you do anything different? But you know, you allow those chance things to happen on set. So the process can be very different, but on all those you feel involved in it. And I always operate because of my documentary background, probably as much as anything, but also think that the frame and the way the camera moves and the way camera relates to the actors or what's in the frame is probably more important than the light, actually, I think. So, you know, so the creative side of it can be just whether the camera's there, or it's here or there, or it's on a 50 or a 40. Denny once said, what's the difference between a 32mm and a 35? And I said, Denny, a world of difference. You're either there or there. To me, that's a huge difference. But if that's just my contribution, if I'm allowed to make it and allowed to be part of the whole process, then it's great. You know, I'd rather do that than have a director's job and all that other stuff that goes on. Yeah.
There was another question, I think, here from one of the students. Back there. Thank you.
I got really interested in your different backgrounds, so I wanted to ask how your hobbies or things that may be seen as a waste of time have improved your work or have inspired some better things.
I don't quite get the question.
How your hobbies have shown up in your work, you know, inspired different things in your work.
Well,
That's right? Not misquoting you.
Seen as a waste of time,
Yeah.
you have used to improve your work.
Well, you know
a
what?
waste of time.
But, you know...
I mean, I think he meant not related directly to
Yeah.
filmmaking,
That's
but
what I
it's
think he's
inspiring.
thinking. But I mean, you know, I grew up in a town on the seaside and spent most of my childhood either at the ocean or on the ocean in a boat. And I just think that experience of the light and the world like that, it stays with you, and that's what I do still now. So, I think everything influences you, doesn't it?
Right, and even fishing, you wouldn't think
That's
it would
what I
have
mean,
anything to do with shooting, but it gives you that quiet time to just sit around and take things in visually.
When was it? It was like last Friday or something. I was out on my boat, miles from anywhere. I only got a little boat, But I'm miles from everywhere, and every hour the wind's different, the sky's different, the birds are different. You just observe things. I mean, I think what we do is about observing. So.
More
Yeah.
questions? Cody? Cody?
Thank you so much for coming over here with us. I struggle a lot with self-criticism, almost to the point where, like, I can't reach this impossibly high standard I set myself to. Do you have any experience with this? And if so, any advice to overcome it?
Hey, what would happen if you overcome it?
You wouldn't be as good because you wouldn't be striving as much. But yes,
I mean, I've said it a million times. I've never shot a shot that hasn't in some way been a compromise. And I mean, that's not just being flippant. I think everything you do, you could do better. You could find some more insightful way of expressing something. You
So
could certainly do something technically better.
you have to keep striving for it, but then learn to let it go and go for the next thing. You know, okay, that shot was the best that I could do with all the limitations, and I wanted it to be better, but fine. And then you go to the next thing and try and do the impossible again. But I mean, when we see a movie after we've shot a movie, first time we're disappointed. We just see the compromises. We don't really think that it works, and it takes us about 5 years to then see the movie and go, maybe it's not so bad as we thought.
Yeah, it's very hard not to sort of relive the experience, you know,
And-
to watch a movie just for what it is.
Yeah, because you have the other movie that you talked about in the beginning that you thought you were making.
I mean, that's not to say you don't achieve scenes that you've imagined and think, you know, I'm glad I brought that off. But there's always things that you could do. You know, you could do better. So I think, you know, I'm my worst critic. So I think that's healthy, personally.
I know there are a couple of more questions. Hold on to them because they're telling me to move on because we have some clips that we want to show and to talk about. There will be we are going to have rounds of questions during all this Q&A, and we'll have a final block of your questions. So just stick to them. And now, in account of this retrospective of your work, we have a question by Paula. She has a question for you.
Yes. Hi, Roger. Hi, James.
Hi.
First of all, I just want to start off by saying that it is such a pleasure to have you both here in our school on behalf of everybody here. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I also want to say that I bought your book not long ago, and it made me very emotional. So congratulations as well.
Thank you.
And now my question, which I think you already answered, but I know that you've worked with a lot of different directors over the years, but I've also known that you've worked with some of them more than once, such as, you know, the Coen brothers or Sam Mendes or Denis Villeneuve. So my question is there something specific that makes you want to work with them again, such as, you know, your relationship with them, friendship, or you just like their project? Maybe Sam just texts you and he's like, hey, I wanna do this film again. Are you in? And you're just, okay.
Yeah, it's a combination of all that. I mean, with Joel and Ethan, we just kind of hit it off on Barton Fink. And, you know, I'd pretty well do anything with them. They're just, I mean, I say they're friends. I don't see them very often, but I would count them as close friends in a strange way. And we've had a wonderful relationship over how many films? I don't know, a lot of different and very different movies. And I think on the films we've done, we've sort of complemented each other in a way because we have a similar, slightly kind of ironic view of the world, I suppose. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure working with them. Denny is a master. I mean, I think in terms of the filmmaker, he's very different than Joel and Ethan in his process. It's much more kind of like, I wouldn't say it's more of a collaboration, but it's more of a discovery process from like early discussions through prep to actually location scouting, and actually nothing is really finalized until you press the button on the camera. But that's been wonderful.
And I also think that Denis is visual. Because
Denis is very visual. I mean,
yeah.
Denis is the closest person to Andrei Tarkovsky I've worked with, I think. Wouldn't you say?
And you can say to him, well, Denis, I think I'd like to go slightly over here. You know, it's a tiny thing, but Denis sees it.
Or 35 or 32.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Denis is really
very
somebody that does make films
Instinctually.
really instinctually, but from
yeah.
the visual, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Sam, I've got on with, I've had great relationship with Sam on very different movies. But he does come from theatre, so it's a kind of different sort of balance, you know. But it just makes it interesting. And again, the projects that he chooses to do, I mean, why wouldn't you do them? I mean, I say that. I didn't do the second Bond movie he did. I didn't want to do that again. But you know, most of the projects he chooses, I mean, they're very special, you know.
And it's a relationship, so if you're able to communicate, then you do want to work with them again.
Yeah, it's the trust, isn't
yeah.
it, as well? You know, it's the
Yeah.
trust that, you know, the collaboration is so much about trust. And you know, so if I was, you know, on, say, something like No Country for Old Men, you know that if you make a suggestion, it will be listened to, but you also know that if it's rejected, don't
There's
be
a reason,
disappointed.
yeah.
There's a reason for it, but you're allowed to it. You know what I mean? You feel that you do have the place, and that's actually they want any suggestions you have, and that's all you can ask for, I think, really.
Thank you. Well, as you know, this morning you were with students of cinematography, and the students we have here right now are their direction, studying direction. So I'd like to talk about your role as a DP and what it's the kind of relation that you establish with the directors. For instance, how do you work? I mean, you receive a script, and how does things start from there? I mean, once you have your script there, I think you read it, but do you wait to talk with the director until he talks to the director?
Yeah.
Or you start to reading it and then...
Well, I mean, you read
taking notes.
anything, you're going to
You
visualize
get
it.
ideas, yeah.
You read a novel when you visualize it.
Yeah.
But you wait.
The first thing is
Yeah.
to talk to the director and see where the director wants it to head.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's a lot of discussion. It depends on the director, how they like to work. But the more discussions that you can have with the director in prep, the better, not only for figuring out how you're going to shoot it, but for developing a shorthand, for developing a trust. Because when you're on the set, it's kind of a war zone, and you want to be able to communicate quickly and to know that each other is on each other's side, basically.
What do you expect from a director in that first stage, in that prep phase?
Depends on the director. You know?
Yeah, you want a director to have a particular, I don't like the word vision, but vision of the script, you know. The kind of, not necessarily, I don't really like it so much if a director says, I want it to look like such and such a film. I was in an interview once, and the director said, I want this film to look like Shawshank Redemption, and I was kind of out the door, because it's like every film's different.
It should be whatever's good for the film.
Yeah, but if directors kind of either written the script so they know that what they're after, or they've kind of thought about the script enough to know what the kind of feel of it they want, you know, and you know, it can be really unspecific. I don't think, you know, sometimes a director will have a kind of mood board that they've spent years doing like a brochure of all these reference images to sell the project to the studio or whatever. That's always interesting. I don't necessarily need that. I just, usually it's just an intuitive judgment of somebody's passion for something, and it might be they're talking about the character development more than anything else. It doesn't have to be about the visuals.
Yeah.
It's just
About
about
what the story is.
tone and what drew them to it. What excites them, because then that's usually what has excited us, really, and it's usually about character development and storyline rather than anything about the visuals and whether there's a big explosion or a few sunsets. You know what I mean?
The director that's a dream to work with is a director that has a vision, is collaborative, and takes in ideas from everyone and does hear the ideas and then chooses the ideas that they want to use, and is not insecure, so doesn't want to hear another idea because this is the path that they had decided in the morning. Just being able to take it in, making that judgment, because then you end up with a better movie. There are some directors that whoever last talked to them, that's what we're shooting, and you kind of feel it in the scenes, because one scene's from the prop person, one scene from the, so it's all uneven. So we really do feel that the director is the linchpin in the production, and we're working for the director. Everybody else is working for the director, but the director is also has hired you because he wants or she wants that input.
And once you have, what kind of notes do you take in your script? Once you have talked with the director, once you know more or less what this guy has in mind, and then you go back to the script, and then you start to work on it. What kind of notes do you take besides day, night, and the obvious stuff? Is there something that's useful for you? Say, let's.
I mean, I'm not sure if you're meaning in a sort of creative or technical side of it. I mean, I do lots of notes and I take lots of images of locations, and I, sometimes do light study of a location. I mean, it depends on the film. I mean, then, we'll end up doing these really intricate computer diagrams of a set with all the plan of lighting and exactly, or I might do a bird's eye view of a location with every camera angle that I imagine the scene will break down into. I'll do that even if it's not with Joel and Ethan as a storyboard, so you break it down into shots that that pretty well definitely going to be shot. But even on a film where there are no storyboards, you haven't shot the shots, I will think what the action's going to be, and I'll draw out what I think are the major angles, and then I'll look at a light study of a location if it's daylight dependent, and figure the order of shooting I want to do it in, or something like that. And I mean, it just depends on the movie and how detailed I kind of need to be to give me the options on the day of the shoot, really.
For instance, in 1917, there were very long takes. They were, often remote operating and everything, and either the Steadicam guy or the stable eye guy had to be in the right place. So we did a lot of rehearsing, and we shot a lot of the rehearsals, and we took frames from the rehearsal when we did up documents, so the guys knew what the frame needed to be on certain points, so they would, the point is sharing the information, so they would know, okay, Roger wants it to be slightly wide here at this point, so we'll be there. So we're trying to create documents that kind of share the information that oftentimes we have that they may not have.
Yeah, so it varies from film to film. It might be one film where you don't do anything, you don't write anything in the script, but you just are flying by the seat of your pants, but in a good way, because that's the way the director, or you and the director have chosen to approach it, So it just varies, which is what's exciting about the job, really. Every film is different.
Well, and also I think it's really important, if you're doing prep and you're doing storyboards, that's a great way to learn the scene and to find out in your own head what's important in the scene. But the worst thing I think, that you can do is go to set and say, well, we have to shoot it this way because it's in the storyboard. Because when you get on a set and you get the actors there, things change because it's, sorry for the word, organic. You know, that's what a film is. It keeps changing as it goes along. So you need to be, and the set might be slightly different than you thought. So you need to be able to go on set and go, oh, we planned this, but since really the notebook is the important feature in here, let's shoot it this way. And you end up with a better product.
Well, it's interesting though, because there's one director I work with that I really like the film that he did or we did together. But I spent a long, I don't know, 4 weeks, I suppose, 4 or 5 weeks with him doing storyboarding the whole film. But I never, for once, imagined that we would shoot exactly what we had storyboarded. And so, you know, the actors would come to set sometimes, and I'd be setting the shot, and the director would be off somewhere else. And an actor would say, well, yeah, but there's a bit flat. Why don't we rehearse the scene and do it like this? And so the shot would change a bit, and then the director would come on set. Yeah, but that's not what we storyboarded.
Yeah.
It wasn't. He didn't even analyze whether it was a worthy alternative or not. And
Right.
what the actors were bringing to it was, no, the shot we storyboarded is this. And it had to be exactly what was on the piece of paper. As I say, I think it's quite a good film, but it's a very different way of working than...
But it also put you into situations when the set was slightly different. So the camera was supposed to be in that corner, but that corner wasn't there. So, but still you were trying to force it into
Well,
that.
there's a lot of chainsaw work, yeah.
Yeah, make
Taking
a
the
hole
corner
in the
out.
wall.
Yeah.
I suppose that every project is different, but
Yeah.
once you're on set, what do you prefer to start with? Do you prefer to start with a mood? I mean, do you create the lighting, and then when you set the mood of the scene, according with the director, obviously, and then you break down into shots, or do you prefer to start with a specific shot and then build up from there?
Well, I think there only are specific shots. I mean, I think one shot follows another.
Yeah, but sometimes, well, maybe sometimes you have the scene. I don't know. This
Oh,
shot
yeah,
is
there
the
might be
center of the
a
scene.
wider shot that sees more of the lighting set of the other. But then sometimes, you know, an actor might want to do their close-up first. No, I mean, for reasonable reasons, because they built themselves up in the time that everybody's unloading the trucks and getting to the set and getting prepared. They've built themselves up for a performance, and you don't want to miss it. So sometimes you're doing that and
Well,
then coming out, you know.
There's so many elements too, because you might be working with a child. So, oh my God, we've got to do the
Yeah.
child first. We got to shoot him out first, even though that doesn't work. Or you could be doing a scene with a very famous actor, and you're going to do all the bottom scene, and then the last shot of the day is a high wide angle, but the actor comes in the morning and turns to the director and says, oh, by the way, I have to leave at 4:30 because I'm in on the David Letterman show. And
Yeah.
what that meant is we had to do his coverage, wrap everything, go up, do his wide shot with him in it, and then come back down and work till 1 in the morning.
Without him, yeah.
Yeah. So
it
these
changes.
things you don't know.
Those are extremes, but I mean, I think you work with a lot of directors that it kind of, the scene evolves as you shoot it, or the actors change the scene as they're getting into their performances. So I think it's usually wise to start at the beginning. What is the opening shot? You know, because time you get to the third or fourth shot, maybe they'll know where they're going.
And if it's possible, do you like to rehearse with all the actors in the scene
Oh,
and
always.
play the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah, I
scene?
mean, most directors do. I mean, unless it's a very simple scene, you know. I mean, there was a number on Blade Runner we didn't rehearse because there was so much setup to do. We didn't rehearse; we just set the shot. But it was, I mean, it wasn't like a intense, you know, performance-driven piece. But I mean, usually director, first thing in the morning, you're either there with the director and the actors before the rest of the crew, or you're doing it, and that's the best thing, or you're doing it first thing when everybody arrives. But that can be embarrassing, because if the rehearsal goes on a long time, which it does with certain actors, then the whole crew's sitting around doing nothing, and that's not a very good thing for the momentum of a shoot, you know.
And it's also important to rehearse, because you got some of these actors have strong opinions, and you thought that they were going to walk in and then sit over there, but they think they're going to walk in and jump rope over there or something on the opposite side. So you kind of have to know, because it might change your shot list for the whole entire day.
But it also brings everybody into it as a
Yeah.
collaboration again. So, you know, the director will rehearse with the actors, and maybe we're there or not, whatever, usually I'm there. But then once they've got that, narrowed it down, then the whole crew come in and see the scene, so everybody's aware of what the day's work is, you know, and I think that really is a nice moment.
Okay. Question. Oh, that's wonderful.
A few.
Iris, a los que estáis aquí, cuando tengáis que hacer la pregunta, por favor levantaos, porque si no nos podemos grabar. Thank you.
I have a question for James. Do you have any advice for a student that wants to become a script supervisor?
Run away. No. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I think knowing cutting is really important. So I used to watch movies with the sound off to look at the cutting, and to be aware of eye lines and things like that. So it becomes second nature, because you have so much else to do, and learn how to get someone to give an idea to someone and make them think it's their own idea. Very important with directors, because learning how to do things quickly, because you have to take a lot of notes. And so I used to have a whole shorthand that I used that only I could read, and then later I would write it out. But yeah, I think knowing editing is really important to make you more than just that's right, and continuity, to learn what doesn't matter in continuity, because it really, half the time, it's not resetting it exactly the way it was, because when you change your angle and you change your lenses, if you set it exactly the way it was, it might look wrong because of the perspective. And also, you may only, out of the 5 things that are wrong, you might only be able to change one, so figure out the most important thing to change. And don't, I have all these things. Don't burden the actor with it.
I think it's like any role on a film, whether it's scripting or cinematography or whatever. You have to gauge what your place is and what your relationship is, what the director's demanding of you, in James's case or mine, what the actor is demanding of the script supervisor or the operator. What is that relationship? And some actors don't want any connection with any of the crew. And maybe not even with the director, but hopefully it's usually with the director at least. But and other actors really want feedback. They want to be part of the whole shoot in a much more communal way, which is really interesting. And you're there really to help the actor as much as anything, because you haven't got a performance, you haven't got a movie, let's face it.
So learning to relate with actors is important, because half the time you're always giving them bad news. You did that wrong. So you need to have a relationship with them that they feel that you're supporting them. So when you need them to make a change, they'll do it for you, that kind of thing. Does that help at all?
Thank you.
Thank you. Sí, que tú la tenías de antes, la pregunta. Por favor.
When you work with a colorist, what knowledge or skills or attitude you wish he'd have? And also, what advice would you give to a colorist to improve their relationship with the director of photography and make the most out of it?
Well, I mean, I do like to shoot. I like to shoot a negative, whether it's digital or film, that is as close as possible to the final product. I don't do much in post. I don't want to. I mean, the only time I've spent a long time in post was on Oh Brother Where Art Thou, which is a very specific look that we were trying to achieve. But
I think as a colorist, you need to sort of be open to the DP and understand what it is they're going for, and not put, it's kind of like a DP with a director, not put your vision on top of the DP. I mean, we've worked with some colorists who feel that they created the look, which is a little hard sometimes. And you're supposed to be working together, and so in that role, you really want to listen to the DP. And
I mean, all the films I've done, I've actually sat in the DI suite for every shot. So I'm not somebody that will say, the colorist will time it and then I'll go in and have a look. That doesn't happen. I sit there and kind of basically say what I want. So I want a colorist that is technically very capable, but especially capable of doing it without using a lot of the tools. I want somebody to do it really simply, and not elaborate on an image where I just want something very simple.
and also know the program well enough to know what the abilities are, so not to have to put 5 windows in one place where there's another tool that would do it in one step.
Yeah.
Thank you. A couple of more questions.
Okay. Hi. No, yeah. So my questions are more related to like 3D, because I love your movies. I've watched some of them, but I've watched all of the animated ones. And I was wondering how your knowledge transferred when you started working in 3D, because that type of medium only existed for like the last 30 to 35 years, and it must have been a changing from live action to animated movies. And adding to that, now that the lines being more blurred when it comes to creating movies with like the scene already rendered in the background, so that the lighting already affects like the actors, how are you adapting to it? Because that technology is still changing, it's still evolving, and yeah, everything in our industry changes. So how are you adapting to those changes?
I've not worked on films with somebody's shot a background that I have to match to. I don't find that very interesting, really. Animation's different. I mean, animation we got into because the first film was Wall-E with Andrew Stanton, who wanted his film to be more like live action. So we were basically talking to all the animators and the lighting guys and the layout guys and talking about, what does a camera do in live action? Why does a live action film look like it does? How do they cut? How do they break down a scene in live action? So it was that kind of process. And but all the animated films we've worked on, it's been because of that, because we've been bringing something from live action, like the kind of the dramatic lighting, if you like, when a lot of animation at the time was kind of fairly flat and it was shot on a wide lens and the camera would just go round and round. So we were quite Dean DeBlois, who was doing How to Train Your Dragon series, is as much a live action filmmaker as you could call him an animator. He thinks in shots and angles, and so that's the way we were working on that. And the basis is you're still telling a story with images and movement of a camera and lighting, and composition. I mean, it's the same language you're using. So the technology is just something that you need to know and manipulate.
You do think, though, if you know you're going to be doing 3D, you think about the speed
3D,
of the moves and stuff like that.
3D is an extension of that, isn't it? Yeah.
We've done some movies that, as part of their distribution, they decided they would also want a 3D version. So we've converted it afterwards, which has been interesting because we're not big fans of 3D. And
no, I hate it. Is that what you mean?
Well, I was
oh, sorry.
But but for instance, in Blade Runner, we knew that that would probably be an issue at the end, but we told them in the beginning, we're not going to shoot it with that in mind, because people do sometimes do their framing and their depth and everything with the knowledge that they're going to 3D, but we said, no, we're just shooting this like a movie. So then we get into the post, and Denis, who also hates 3D, said, well, I don't really like it. So you guys can
Good
do
accent,
it.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
guys
so
can
we
do
did
it.
it, yeah.
So, but what we did was very minimal. It was kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have it coming out of the screen, and there was some depth to it. I was sitting there just thinking, when we bring the studio in, are they going to get... First of all, the 3D people didn't know how to do it that way. So we were having... Because everybody that was doing 3D wanted it all out in the audience. So it was a learning curve for them, and we were going round and round and round, and they were finally getting it. But I was sure that the studio would come in and go, this isn't 3D. What is this? But they were good. They
liked
came
it.
in and, yeah, they said this
I
is
think,
good.
you know, I think I'm being flippant about 3D, but yeah, if you're going to make a film for 3D, make it for 3D. Don't take something that's shot flat, anamorphic, or 235, whatever, and just make it 3D because you'll get a wider audience.
But that's...
You know, I think there's sort of films that are being made now, or I don't know if you call them films. I don't really care what they are. They're kind of experiences that Inarutu and Chivo have been doing, and it's like, you know, they may have a 360 surround experience. You know, I mean, filmmaking is not just strictly filmmaking as I was brought up to. I mean, it's changing all the time. So, but I don't like the idea that you can shoot 235, but then you have to shoot for IMAX, and it's going to be made into 3D as well. Get your story straight. What are you making? I just find that, yeah.
Did that answer your question?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally did.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
One quick last question there. Hold on to them, because we are going to see Emma. And then we have another clip. So thank you.
Hi. Everyone's here have good English, not me. So I hope.
Okay.
La puc traduir jo, si vols.
I'm gonna try. I think I can do it.
Okay.
So I want to be a director, and I'm afraid of photography, but I want to learn it because I want to communicate me with my DOP as vale.
Use me.
Do you have some advice to learn about photography, like an easy way, like?
To learn
go
it?
on.
Easy to learn it? Is that what you said?
It's like
Advice for that?
I'm afraid of the type of cameras, the numbers.
We all are.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to learn it. But I don't want to be a director of photography. But I want to learn it. You have some advice to learn it, like easy, like in an easy way.
I wish, yeah.
Like,
I wouldn't have wasted 55 years.
Yeah. Like, I'm always thinking like you need to hurry up and learn about photography, but okay, I want to be a director, so first learn the director thing. But
yeah, I think that's
you
a good
get
idea.
me?
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe you focus on just visuals versus camera. You don't need to know every camera that's out there. You really don't. But you need to know what you want and what you visually want. And you want something that looks more rough, let's say, for what you're doing, more documentary-like. So you need to be able to communicate that to the DP. You don't need to say, I want to use, this is a very wrong example, but a FLIR camera. But you don't need to know that. That's the DP's job to go, oh, you want to do that? Let me research and find out. The FLIR camera is the one that does
infrared.
the infrared, so bad example.
You don't need to know that. I mean, I would suggest you just get a very simple stills camera. And that'll teach you about f-stop, exposure, framing. you know, have a set of 3 prime lenses. It will teach you about lenses. You don't have to get some fancy, you know, digital film camera.
Okay, so I'm gonna trust you.
She's coming back to you
I'm
too
gonna
if it
trust
doesn't
you.
work out.
Okay.
But you know, it depends. It depends how deep you want to go. As I say, you could be me and be 74 years old and still not know it.
Thank you, Emma. Well, let's go for another clip, please. Beth has a question for you.
Okay, so we've selected a fragment of Skyfall from Sam Mendes, and I wanted to ask you if the use of the like narrative is something that you think on your own, or do you agree before with the director? So how's the process of thinking it?
Whether the idea came from Sam or from you, the light, the concept of the light.
On that scene?
Yeah, that scene.
Yeah,
she
or
was talking
in
about.
general.
Oh,
in
no.
general.
I mean, I don't think I've really worked with a director that's actually even has really ever given me much direction on light. I mean, sometimes one of the directors will say, like a man who wasn't there, they'll say, well, I'd like this scene to have a feel of a theatrical spotlight. It was a jail scene. But this scene that you just showed, for instance, is interesting because Sam and Barbara and Dennis and that scouted Shanghai. We were going to shoot in Shanghai. And they scouted and found this office building with this space that they were thinking of shooting that scene in that looked out on the towers. And but I wasn't with them. And so when I started on the production myself, I got on a plane and went to Hong Kong. I went to Shanghai to look at these locations they'd chosen, and I thought, well, okay, we're on, I don't know, the 40th floor of this tower block, looking out at a blank wall. That at night, I saw it in the day, and I went back at night, and I said, well, there's nothing out there. Although Shanghai's got these fantastic, you know, big screens illuminated, but you only see them from the Bund, from the other side of the river, from this location. So I said, what are we going to do? Are we going to CG it in or what? Why are we here? And so when I got back to the studio, I talked to the production designer before I talked to Sam. I said, I don't see what we're getting there. Oh, and the other thing, I was staying in this hotel on the 50th floor, and it was all glass, and I was sitting in the dining room one evening looking over at the river and the Bund and all that, and it was this very glass hotel. So when I got back to the studio, I said to the designer, well, what are we doing it there? Couldn't we do it on stage? And that just evolved. And I said, well, if we do it on stage, then we could decide how much is glass. So we built a model. It was probably about 10 by 4 or something like that. And yeah, sure enough, made his glass walls, then put in 2 iPads with an image on each iPad to see how it reflected in the glass, and that's how it evolved. And the reason there's jellyfish in the back of that screen is one of the screensavers they put on one of these things were jellyfish. And when the designer said to us, okay, well, now we've got to decide what's on the screens. And Sam and I looked at each other, we just went like that. Well, jellyfish, of course. Because it was just a counterpoint to the scene. We thought, oh, that's just beautiful. And then on the other screen, well, we created a panel of lighting and put on this playback material we made up. And then, yeah, we built the set off the floor so we could put everything in for real except for the deep background. Some of that was a translite, which is a big slide. And the only CG is when you see the street below in the distance, they put moving traffic in. And when he falls over the side, they put the extension because we were only up a floor and a half. Or we were about 14 feet off the ground, maybe. But we were in the big 007 stage at the studios. So yeah, that went from being a location shoot, which didn't make sense, to studio, which gave me all the opportunity to play with it, and then to go in it and pre-light it and gradually add light to it as every evening we were shooting something else, and I would go to the stage and just play with it, So yeah, that's how that came about.
We also choose the scene because there is a moment which I found extremely interesting. There's a moment which Bond is following this sniper in this maze of glass. And there is a moment in which the sniper notices something behind him. And then he turns, and Bond is just in the middle of nowhere because there's nowhere where he can hide. But then the light of the neon outside conceals him and hides him. And that's I think it's a wonderful example of lighting used in a narrative way. I mean, and when I watched the movie preparing your coming here, and I was, when did this idea come about? I mean, is something that was already on the script, or is something that is like, hey, we don't need a closet or furniture to hide Bond. I can use light to hide Bond.
That came partly from the model, and then actually walking to the set as I actually started lighting it. Once we got most of the exterior lighting up there, you could see what was happening in the glass. So that just evolved. I mean, the script had solid walls. I mean, it was written as though it was an office block with one glass wall looking out. So it was the whole thing changed once we decided we could do it with glass, or wanted to do it with glass. Then it was all about the mystery of the reflections I mean, I remember Sam was quite concerned about, well, wouldn't they see each other? But because it's so down, and I said the only light is going to be coming from the outside, so we can make them see as much as we want of each other, In
fact, in Skyfall, there's a couple of more moments in which the light just pushes forward the narrative. Because, for instance, in the end, when Javier Bardem is looking for Judi Dench, and they see the flashlights, far away, and then so he knows where they are, and then. I mean, it's like it's conceiving lighting, not just something that puts a mood on a room, or something that just light the actors, but something that can support the narrative, and then provide tools for a director maybe to ease the problems of one specific scene.
Well, it can also add so much, tell the story so much more, because this morning we saw some student films, and there was one where there was a conflict between a woman and a man, and the woman's face was lit, but the man's face was not, and it told the story that
it just enhances the threat of the character, Yeah, I mean, you're doing that all the time. I mean, but it's something that kind of like just builds up as you talk about. I spent a long time sitting with Sam going through that script and talking about scenes that are not in it. There was a chase with speedboats on a canal that we were going to shoot in Shanghai as well, with this monastery, this island monastery, and it was all going to be night. And I'm saying, well, okay, but that's a huge lighting job. I mean, that'll take an enormous amount of time. Yeah, they have a lot of money, but that was still, even in their terms, was huge. But a number of things happened, and we only shot some second unit in Shanghai, and everything else was done back at the studio. And so for the casino, the casino where Bond comes by the boat and into this casino and all that, that was a combination of a set on stage and this almost 2D set that was the exterior of the casino, built on the exterior pond that they have at the Pinewood. They have an exterior pond with a big blue screen. Well, Dennis built a 2D thing, and we put little lights like this all over it to make it look like a pack of Chinese. And then they had these guys make these big dragons, And Dennis I talked about it. I said, well, I don't want to light them from outside. Can we put light inside them? So they designed them so we could light them from inside, so the big glowing dragons. And, the whole thing just sort of gradually, it's the collaboration. People have ideas and throw them in, and sometimes they get rejected, and sometimes, they get embraced,
And when you are facing a project like Skyfall, which belongs to a franchise like James Bond, did you have to follow a book of style, something that the producer, okay, it's a Bond movie, so it has to look more or less like this, or did you have freedom to more or less whatever you wanted?
I was one of the first time Sam called me. We were in Australia.
Santa Fe.
In Santa Fe.
That was Spectre.
That was Spectre. The first time he called up, he said, "Don't put the phone down when I tell you what I'm going to do next."
Don't hang up on me.
When I tell you what I'm going to do next, he said, "I'm going to do the Bond movie." I said, "Okay." He said, I'll be in LA when you get back, and we'll talk about it." And the first thing he said, "I don't want to shoot it any differently than we shot the last film or the one before, so it wouldn't be massively multiple camera all the way through or something. I would still operate." So we shot most of it single camera, a lot with 2 cameras, but very little with multiple cameras. We approached it. It was a character study. You have to put in certain scenes, don't you? A certain amount of action.
It was funny because when we came back after that, it was the 50th anniversary of Bond, so it was on every television at night. So I'd never seen any Bond movies, really. I didn't want to. And so we would see little clips, bits of them every night. And I was astonished that they were all the same.
They're all the same.
I mean, there's always a casino scene. There's a boat scene. That there was a formula, but we didn't know. I mean, I didn't know. But the original script was a little bit was darker, and so it did change a little bit. But the thing about Bond, which is different than other franchises, is that the producers that own the Bond, they're very supportive of the creatives, and they get the different directors in to get something different to a point. So long as you have the casino and you have that, you can do what you want.
Well, I think they embrace the glass tower because they usually have a mirror scene at some fun fair.
Yeah,
don't
right.
They? Somebody shooting into mirrors. So that was our version of that, I suppose. But we didn't talk about any other Bond movies or use them as references, or no way.
But who knows what conversations Sam got into with them.
We
don't know
that. But we didn't have to go through that anyway.
And when you are when you have a period film, I mean, a film that it's based on some past age or centuries ago, decades ago, do you go to the reference? Do you look for specific pictorial, photographic references from that time, or do you like to start from scratch? I'm thinking, for instance, in Jesse James. In Jesse James, you did a Western, and a Western obviously has a tradition that goes back a century. Did you want to do your own kind of Western along with Dominic?
Andrew did. I mean, Andrew had a very, the novel that is the basically the scripts from is very different than most Westerns. It's very sort of poetic and lyrical and metaphysical. It's kind of it was a really interesting piece. So reading the script and meet with Andrew, you knew it wasn't conventional Western. He really wanted to create, if not the exact historical truth, he wanted to create a truth of that time. And the only real reference we used and actually copied was the photograph that was taken of Jesse James in the morgue. It was.
I mean, the costume people and the production designer, of course, are doing all that research. So basically, you come on the set and the pieces around you are correct.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that...
the architecture was right. I mean, the Chicago theater was lit as it would have been with the mix
Yeah.
of gas and early electricity, you know, and all those sort of things you bring into it. But yeah, I mean, where we really did go to references, I think the only time I've really gone to references was for 1917. And there was one particular, we had loads of photographs, obviously, and a bit of film, because there was film from the war. But there was one photograph of that I really gravitated to, which was on a slightly longer lens than a lot would have been. I mean, it was like on a 50, but it was on a largest format camera, I suppose, anyway. But the perspective of it was interesting. And it was just 4 guys digging in a trench. And one young guy was just looking at the camera, and he had such a haunted face on him. And I don't know, I just took that image that it wasn't like right there. It was kind of slightly apart from the subject, and the focus fell off a little bit. And that's what I was trying to relate to in what we were doing. We shot on an LF, which is larger format, and I wanted to go for a certain depth of field. So yeah, I mean, that was this very specific reference that I think probably is more inspiration than anything else. But
Questions? Here you are from. What?
It's work? Yeah. I have a question. Usually, well, every film has its creative challenges and its technical challenges. Basically, what you want to do and how to do it. So my question is, what would you think is especially for a cinematographer, what's a more common challenge? I mean, do you struggle more on finding what to do or how to do it? Because again, for example, like 1917, he has like a technical challenge that it's obvious that it was a sequence shot. Also, like the LED, the big fire scene. I heard that you get like a million LEDs or something like that. What's more common? I mean, do you usually know what to do? It's more about how to do it. It just depends on the project, on the film.
Well, on 1917, you guys talked about what you, as if it was a conventional film, who do you want to be on, when, so without thinking how to do it.
yeah.
So going through what the shots would be.
Yeah, where do you want to put the audience? That was the first thing. I mean, I think the hardest thing is that. It's the creative, whatever, it's the decision about what you want to do. I think how you do it, I mean, the technical side of it is just, you just work through it. It's just logical, really. I mean...
But you have to know what you're working towards, so you have to do the creative first and know what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
And then figure out, how the hell do I do it?
Well, the trick is not to let let the technical sort of restrict what you really want to do. I can't think of an instance where I haven't been able to do something that was relatively close to what I imagined in my head. You know, let's say everything you do is a compromise in some way. I mean, it's bound to be, but yeah, I mean, it's funny the way technology kind of advances. It's like for 1917, when Sam said, you know, I want to do that, well, it's still on the script, that this is envisioned as a single shot in real time. You think, well, how do you do that? But then there were these stabilizing systems that were literally state of the art that we could use to do it. And that's happened quite a lot in my life, that things have come along and allowed you to do something, whether with the early days of a remote camera head, you know. There's a shot in Barton Fink where the camera goes from a bed, crosses a room and goes into the bathroom and goes up into the sink and goes down the plug hole. Well, without a remote head, that shot wouldn't have been possible. You know, so it's funny how things get invented and then, oh yeah, that works.
And the same technology evolves and it expands the creativity. So you still think about creativity just because you have more options now, I guess. Like you have, I think you couldn't do 1917 well, you couldn't before the Steadicam, I guess. So.
Well, we figured out what the shots, who you needed to be on, and then we had to figure out how to do it, and that was daunting. And we thought, oh my God, have we made a mistake here to do this?
Yeah, at first you think, oh, how do you do that? But then you work through it and
do some tests and
discover new technologies or sometimes create new technology. I mean, they made a camera for us on that because Sam wanted to shoot with a larger format than we had on Skyfall, and I wanted that depth of field thing I was just talking about.
But it had to be small.
But it had to be a small camera to be able to do it with the equipment we had. So Ari actually made that camera for us. You know.
The
LF Mini.
The
yeah.
Mini LF.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That was a big one. Great.
Yeah, we actually were shooting with a prototype, which is very, very scary.
Now it's very common.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it was.
implemented. Okay.
Mm.
Thank you.
Let's go for another one. Yeah. Okay. Vale. Liam. Hold on to. We'll make room for all questions.
Hello.
If not.
Hi.
Do you think that nowadays, as for ourselves, the younger people, is it maybe easier, or is it more difficult to get in the film industry, or just to make a living out of
film
it?
industry. I don't know. I think it's always hard wherever your perspective is. I mean, I thought it was incredibly hard to get a foot in the door when I started because it was like a closed shop. If you didn't have relatives in the industry that had worked in the industry for years, then it was hard to get in. You know, film schools, there weren't that many, and film school students were resented. So I thought that was hard, but on the other hand, you know, there weren't that many cinematographers. So once I got my foot in the door, I guess I could work. And it was in the early days of rock videos, which was a great source of work. And also Channel 4 television in England opened up, and they started doing independent features, and that was what I started on. So,
But now there's streaming.
And now there's,
streaming, they just need quantity.
But that still does
fill
offer
up.
a huge amount of work and opportunity to get a foot in the door. So I don't know really if it's easier or not now. Not help, I'm sorry.
Let's go for another clip. Another clip. Thank you. Paul Alba has a question. Okay.
Hello, it's such an honor to have you here. We just saw a fragment of Dead Man Walking, the second film of Tim Robbins as director. And my question is for both of you, is how do you choose the projects of a new director or a director that you haven't worked before? It's the passion that you mentioned before, or the script, or something that you are hiding from us?
The script was wonderful. I mean...
Yeah, come on. I mean, we worked with Tim twice before, and Hudsucker Proxy and Shawshank. So become a friend, really. And yeah, reading the script. The other thing that sold it for me was interesting because we met up to talk about it, and the first thing he says, you might not want to do this because it's another prison movie, and I want it to look really bland. And I said to him, but if you'd have said to me, I want to look like Shawshank Redemption, I would not have stayed in the room. But the script is so interesting, and I know what you mean. He said, I just want it to look like really kind of inconsequential, the look of it, because that was the nature of the world that Sean Penn's character was in, in the jail. So I thought he put it brilliantly. He didn't need to say anything more, I understood what he meant by it, so, yeah.
And you asked about working with new directors. The thing that we really love is the passion.
Yeah.
Because sometimes directors with a lot of experience, some of that gets filtered out of them. So all we're looking for is passion and commitment to the script. And
well, I wish we get the chance more now, but I don't know if we get approached because some people think, we're a bit too sort of like, impose ideas or something silly like that. But, sure.
This movie belongs a moment of in your filmography that you used to work with what's called independent filmmakers. I mean, from that time it was also Passion Fish with James Ellis.
Yeah.
And this kind of movie, it's maybe a type of movie that has disappeared in this
Yeah,
new
well,
regime
Yeah.
of.
That's a
those
problem.
those are the sort of movies that I really wanted to do that were, you know, kind of socially relevant. Yeah, but I mean, I don't. There's some being made, but I'm not getting the chance to work on them. You know.
We have another clip now. Please.
Why do they call the dog Scuffy or something?
Ramon Pons has a question for you.
Hi, my question is for both of you about the film we just saw, No Country for Old Men, from the Coen brothers. As an aspiring script supervisor, I would like to know how did you, Roger, work on this amazing scene, persecution scene that goes from night to sunrise with the director? And for you, James, I would like to know how would you approach this scene if, as an script supervisor, and what's the key to a good communication with your DP? Thank you.
Marry him. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're turning bright red.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, the thing about that scene is like, you know, they're storyboarding the whole film, so you know what the shots are going to be, you know what the cutting pattern's going to be and everything. So it's just, it's once you've got that down, it's just a matter of methodically working through everything. So we scouted locations. The night scene at the beginning, the night work at the beginning was the hardest lighting I think I've ever done, just because the scale of that landscape. But we found this place that had a big bluff overlooking it, that I could put a couple of really big lights on top of it that would look like, I mean, moonlight, but I mean, I hate moonlight, but that's what you do. But then I wanted to create the idea of dawn beginning. And the shame was, I kind of, the location worked really well for Joel and Ethan, and where they laid the cars, the trucks out and the thing, and where Josh comes up in his truck to overlook it and everything, it all worked out great. But I was trying to get it round, facing a little further round so it could face the true dawn. But they couldn't stage it the way I wanted it. I mean, it was better. It worked the way they staged it, just physically it wouldn't work to make us shoot directly towards where the dawn was going to come up. So I had to create dawn with lights, basically. So I had a bank of lights behind that mound just shooting up at the sky. And I put in some very light dust. So you get the glow, which I was trying to say is dawn, but I know this is a long answer. There's one shot where Josh ran away, and it just makes me look at it. I cry because there's dawn coming up here, but the real dawn's coming up next to it, and it's not. They don't quite mesh because it's a cloudy morning, and so a lot of frustration. But basically, it's like you go through it and you figure how you're going to light that part. How is dawn going to come up? Where do we start shooting? Only with natural light and not with the moonlight that I've created for the night work, because the moon's not just going to turn off like that. So you have to figure out how you're going to make those sort of that sort of transition. All the stuff at the river, right at the river, was a different location, and I looked at the locations and the camera angle. We walked through where the camera angles could be. We thought what shots would go where, and then I looked at it at dawn and dusk and decided exactly the time of day I wanted to shoot each shot, and I laid that out, on a schedule and worked with the AD as to how we could shoot it. So one shot would be at 5:30 till 6, and another shot would be 6:30 to 7, and another day you would be somewhere else on the river shooting either dawn or dusk. So it was all that kind of jigsaw and working with the AD to find a way of doing it in the schedules. A couple of the shots we did a shot at dusk, we did a night scene, and then we got ready and did a shot of dawn. You know, it was that kind of thing to make it work.
And as a script supervisor, you would do a day breakdown anyway, and you would go through it with the director. And what I would do is I would put times on it because it just helped everyone know how much time passage had happened. So you go through it with the director, then you go to the DP and ask them, and oftentimes they say, no, I want this to be in magic hour, so you check with the director, but it's all on your sheet. But then when you're working, you do want a good relationship with the DP because oftentimes you see something that doesn't look right, and if you go to the DP instead of the director first and say, it doesn't make sense to me that this is turned this way, they could say, oh, I'm not actually starting here or whatever, so you haven't made a big deal of it with the director yet. You go to the DP, and then also the DP can be your ally in eye lines, because you can say to them, what do you think about this? Because you're also working then with two memories, especially if the DP's operating, they've seen it through the lens, so you can double check yourself with eye lines with them. And so if you have a question, oftentimes I would always go to the department first, to the DP or the prop or whatever, to give them the time to make the corrections, so you're not always telling on
or
them
bothering
to the
director with something that you can solve a different way. I mean, the other thing about those sort of sequences where you've got extended sequence with time check, I mean, dawn does come up very quick in that sequence, doesn't it? But that would have originally been scheduled as a day shoot, and you would be expected to do sort of day for dusk or dawn, day for dawn, and I just wasn't wanting to do that. I didn't see how I could marry that with the night work with this kind of very sort of fairly fake moonlight look. So. Yes, but it's always a trade-off. It might not have worked, but again, having worked with Joel and Ethan for so many years, and then with the whole team, then there was, again, it's a lot of trust about, okay, Roger wants to do it that way, let's see if we can make it work that way. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Since we have just 2 clips left, let's watch this clips, and then we'll make a final round of questions for everybody to.
YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, it's in YouTube in a very low resolution copy, but it's complete. It's a complete film.
My God.
Yeah,
God,
I'm sure you didn't expect that.
No,
yeah,
I did not. No. But I do remember shooting Bill Haley in the comments in somewhere near Euston in London. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you said on the previous Q&A this morning that I was very shocked to hear. I mean, is that when people ask you if you were interested in becoming a filmmaker, a director yourself, you said that when you were studying, you see yourself more like a documentary director more than a cinematographer, and the first part of your career has been in documentary filmmaking, and I wanted to ask you how this documentary training has influenced or has affected the way you have worked later on feature films.
Well, I think, in a direct relationship, I think if you're shooting a documentary, and most of the documentaries I shot were kind of like verite. They weren't set up. They were sort of following a theme or in a situation or something. So you were just capturing what you could as life was evolving in front of you. So it's really kind of, I think, teaches you about where you put yourself to film an event. What's the most insightful image you can take of something that's happening in real time in front of you. I think it does have a big effect. But I think it had a bigger effect, in fact, in opening up my life. Until I started shooting documentaries, I'd been to Europe twice, I think, once a weekend in Paris with a girlfriend, which I better not talk about, and and once to shoot a film in Switzerland, and that was it. And so when I started documentaries, one of the first films I did was going into Rhodesia when it was Rhodesia and the war was going on. And then I did a number of things like that. And I went on a round the world yacht race and made a film about the crew and people getting on and board around the world yacht race. And I think it just opened me to other experiences and more things. It just enriched my life, if you like, in some way. And I think then you bring things like that to what you do, don't you? You know.
Yeah, and in fact, I'd like to remember something that you said at the beginning of this conversation, in which, if I'm not mistaken, you said that sometimes more important than the lighting is the relationship that you create with the between the camera and the characters, real.
I think, I mean, I would go far as say it's much more important than the lighting.
But that's something that it's very documentary style, like,
right?
Because sometimes, as a documentary filmmaker, the only thing you have is the distance.
Right.
I mean, you cannot control the lighting. You cannot control everything. Right. You can only control how close to your character.
But it's also kind of the empathy you bring to the way you shoot a subject. I mean, the last documentary I made with a friend, John Saunders. It was about mental health. We shot it mostly it was inside a mental health hospital, following the treatment of a number of patients, and then following them when they were sent home. And yeah, it's about your relationship with those people. Sometimes I'm going to be joking a bit, but sometimes I feel the same thing when you're in a relationship with an actor with a camera. You know, some of them are crazy. Oh, that's being flippant, but it is about relationships. You know, that's what's really important.
Okay, thank you for that. Because sometimes we like to remember our students that besides fiction filmmaking, there is documentary filmmaking, which is a world in itself, and it's incredibly wonderful and rich for creation, for film creation. So I'm telling you that
now, I mean, the kind of documentary work, the way people can, you know, Alexander now, whoever, the way they can approach a documentary now with the kind of, you know, the equipment you can use now instead of the days of 16mm film and an NPR and carrying loads of film stock with you and all that. I mean, it's a different world now. The sort of things you can do is pretty magical, I should think.
Okay, then let's go to the final round of questions. The floor is open. There's a lot of there were some at the back. There's somebody from before. Podeu aixecar un moment les mans perquè sabia quanta gent vol preguntar? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll try to... Ivy, quina hora és ara? Bueno, pues ja sabeu.
Hi, good afternoon. When you're planning a scene, you take into account the sound director's opinion, or it's more like, hey, you have to resolve this or solve this?
The sound? You're talking about the sound, did
yes,
you say?
To resolve.
Yeah. Yes, when you're planning a scene, you take into account opinion about the scene or not?
You have to, but I mean, I wouldn't say I don't have diverse opinions with sound recorders sometimes. No, but I mean, it's a balance, you know. I mean, what I hate now is when a sound recordist will say, oh, well, we can keep the mic in frame because they can paint it out later.
Well, they don't say that for long, but
they don't say it for long. I mean, but that's so sloppy. And you know, I mean, everybody wants to do the best job they can, so you have to understand that, but you also have to understand there's certain boundaries. I feel there's certain boundaries of what a sound recordist can do.
Well, and it's difficult because oftentimes sound doesn't get paid attention to because they were thinking so much about the visual. And I try on the set because I know what the shots are going to be, and sometimes that information isn't being given out. I do talk to the sound person because I like sound, and let them know what the shot is, where the camera's going to be, so they can think ahead of time if they want to hide mics or whatever, because they're never given the time to do that when we're ready to shoot. So if they get the possibility, but we've had the fortune to work with Stuart many times, who is, I know you think, a pain in the ass at times, but he's very good. He's really good at what he does.
But the great thing is a great boom swinger, you know, where somebody that can really judge where the frame line is. I do get, I mean, I'm operating and I'm quite fluid with the camera, and like I kind of adjust things and I change things from take to take even, you know, if I understand that I'm okay doing that with a director, for instance. But then when the boom swinger is not in sync with what I'm doing, I can get a bit frustrated.
Well, it can be distracting too if you just
It's
start to see
distracting.
it
You kind of
popping
want
in.
to pull back or tilt up a bit, and the boom's there, and you're going, you know, trying to make some gesture to get him raise the mic, but it's really frustrating.
And the other issue often that comes up, that the boom swinger has to be working out pretty quickly, is reflections. Because so many times we have these shiny surfaces and nobody's looking at that point. And having a boom reflection is really not good, but yeah, I feel for you guys working. I really do.
Okay.
Hi. It's a question related to something you said earlier about how you said Denise, the director you've worked with, is more like Andrei Tarkovsky, and it's something I never thought about, and it sounds like it works, but I'd like to hear why you think that. Why you think that he's someone like Andrei Tarkovsky.
Well, I think I think most films are cut too fast. And I don't think as many directors allow a shot to become something more than just information for a few frames. You know, I mean, Denis will hold a shot until it becomes something else. It might start become uncomfortable or something, you know. And I think it's just about pacing, really, and it's about, I say, what the shot is saying that's not directly furthering the narrative.
Right. He's not literal oftentimes.
Yeah.
When we were doing Prisoners, we, of course, had a day that, come on, hurry up, you've got to finish the day. And Denis suddenly said, you know what, just put the camera on a dolly here and just push into this tree trunk. And of course, production went wild because, what do we need this? What is this doing? Nobody's talking. Why are you doing that? And it's such a powerful shot in the movie, and Denis didn't even know where it was going to go, but he trusted his instinct, and to just put it, because it's very threatening in a way, just a shot for no reason.
Yeah. I don't know, it's sensibility. I don't know if you can totally put your finger on it, but he's playing with sound and images in a way that few other filmmakers do. I think Andrew Dominic did on Jesse James to a degree, you know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's also another question that came up to me later. When you were talking about 3D and changing formats midway through a shoot, and becoming aware that some movies are shot partially in IMAX and partially not in IMAX, and then I believe they're screened partly in IMAX and whatever's in IMAX, and I never thought that. And I'm not sure that it makes sense to me to shoot partially in IMAX.
It doesn't make sense to us either.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to. I mean, Chris Nolan does it. I mean, he's doing it for very specific reasons. What I was referring to was shooting a film all the way through with multiple. For multiple formats when deliverables, yeah. The idea you can shoot something that's a widescreen for a wide frame, and then also have it on an IMAX screen, I don't
so-
understand that. What are
but-
you composing for? It seems a bit odd to me. But.
What we do in the beginning with those movies, because there are a lot, is talk to them and say, all right, so we're going to shoot 239, let's say, and that's what we're composing for. We will do our best to protect up and down, because we take the width of it for IMAX and then just add to the top and bottom, but we'll try and protect for that, which means getting the mic way far away,
which
unfortunately.
compromises all that,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
the whole thing.
But, you know, sometimes it's not possible, and on the set we've got to say, I'm sorry, but we just have to shoot it this way, and this does come in. But you also are doing that for visual effects as well, because they're having to do bigger visual effects. So you kind of state that in the beginning, because when you're starting, okay, what are your deliverables? What are we going to do about it?
But the idea of mixing formats within a film, I mean, it's fine. Actually, only time I can remember we did it on
Serious Man.
A Serious Man. It starts off on a 133 kind of period movie about it, and then becomes something else. But that was just like as a pre-title sequence. I think it's a different thing. I always feel, well, I don't know if it was now or this morning, somebody was asking me about lens flares and artifacts that draw your attention to the fact that there's a camera and a lens. And that's why I don't like it, because I've always seen film as like the picture on the wall coming to life, you know. You're trying to take the audience in a world and remove any sense of artifacts, you know, from it, to draw them in. So to me, if I see a lens flare, that's kind of not what I see in reality. So it's a silly thing, I know, but...
Sentito molt, m'han dit que només hi ha temps per
Thank
una
you.
última pregunta. Sí. Aquí. Vinga, deixem aquí al davant.
Hi, thank you for being here first. And I am in the VFX side. So my question is, what do you think about the digital VFX and in your movies, and how close do you work with the VFX team in the early beginnings on the street or something in order to accomplish the best results in the shot?
We work very closely with them, and one of the things that I do right away is create a relationship with the visual effects producer and supervisor, because oftentimes they are at odds with the cinematographer. They'd like to shoot it on blue screen. The cinematographer does not want to. So because I have knowledge of that, I'll talk to them and say, what are the elements that you need, and try and work out a compromise. And I think that's really important to do in the beginning, because you're going to be together for a long time, but also to communicate what you're trying to do with the shot.
Yeah, there was I think the clearest example of that was on this film Unbroken, where we're shooting in a whole sequence in a B-29 bomber.
Yeah.
In a B-29 bomber. We had a real replica, and it was on a gimbal on a stage. We were going to manipulate it, and actors would be inside and everything, and I would do light changes as though the sun was shifting, because I had a lamp on a big crane that was going over. But I said to the effects guys, the only way I'm going to light this is so the light's coming in through, well, the cockpit for sure, but also there's an open bomb bay, and there's a side door that somebody's shooting out. And I said, the only way I'm going to light this is by basically surrounding the whole thing with a big silk and doing a pattern of lights behind it. So there's basically a big soft light, a big sky dome that I was creating. And they said, well, yeah, but you've got to have blue screen everywhere we see outside the plane. And I said, no way, I'm not doing blue screen. You're just going to have to live with it. And there was so much pushback, because they wanted to get their key of somebody standing in a cockpit with an exterior background, and they wanted to separate them with blue. But I said, well, how's the light going to get into the airframe if there's blue there. So, you know, there's some times where you have to explain why you're doing it. And then the effects guy came up at the end and said, yeah, I totally get it now, but I'm sorry, but I didn't when you were talking about it, when we started. But having shot it and having worked on it, he realized.
And I think another thing that's really important with visual effects is to understand the look of the movie, because sometimes what happens is you send off the visual effects shots and they're being treated as a separate shot, and they're not. In Blade Runner, we had a scene where it's a very gray, overcast world, and that they put a beautiful sun in the background.
Sun in the
because
back
it
is
looked
shot,
good.
and you go, yeah, that looks lovely, but it's got nothing to do with our film.
So you know, you have to do that, and you also sometimes on movies it goes to different effects houses, okay, different segments, but then in that effect house, different people are working within the same scene, and oftentimes you talk to one person and say, this is, you know, the light's coming from here, we should do this and all that, but somehow it doesn't get passed down to the rest of the team, so you'll be looking at the visual effects dailies and they're different. And I understand, because it's usually that you're working really long hours and they want it yesterday and all of that, but that communication among your group ends up making you look better, because then everything fits together.
I usually actually been last larger films been asked by the director to come back on towards the end of post and actually oversee the effects, because again on the unbroken bomber sequence, what I think the effects guy didn't understand is when you're inside the actual frame, you're not actually seeing much detail in the background. You want it to be almost blown out. And as the camera gets nearer, then it reveals the exterior, because that's naturally what your eye does. And they were thinking they wanted a completely, fully detailed sky and action outside. But I never work like that, you know.
And also, and also on Blade Runner, we wanted to be involved, and oftentimes the studio pushes back because they think, oh, more complications will slow down the visual effects. So we backed off, we went somewhere else, we came back, and Denis said, will you come in? And what happened is that Denis would be telling the visual effects people, that's not right, and that was it. You know, but Roger came in and say, it's not right because there's too much contrast here. Roger was talking their language. So I think it's important, because it's very hard for you to say, well, it's not right. Well, what do you mean it's not right? So having the DP around is actually quite helpful.
I think of some of the problems on films, the visual inconsistency on movies is that there's not one single person that's overseeing the look of the movie. You know, as James says, there's lots of different facilities doing different shots and doing different sequences. So often, when somebody said earlier, I think it was today, about cinematographer matching to a background that somebody else has shot and put on a LED screen that they've got to match, and suddenly everything gets confused. There's no cohesive, understanding of that image that goes through. And the sunset that the guys have done on this shot in Blade Runner was a really good case in point, because it was a beautiful shot, but it didn't match anything. You know, yeah.
Okay, that was it. I mean, thank you very much for being here. Thank you. It was a lovely time for us. I hope it was also a pleasure for you.
It was really stressful. That was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here, for coming to Barcelona. ¿Está Joel por aquí? Sí. Come on. I don't know if you are aware of this, but here in Catalonia, in Barcelona, we have a tradition, and one of the most important days of the year, it's St. George Day, April 23rd.
Yeah.
And on that day, you see the whole town. It's full of stands selling books and roses, and so We're going here, please.
Oh.
A rose for you, and a book for you.
Oh, look. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is your house. Just come feel yourself at home here. So you can
Thank you.
come again anytime you want.
Oh, thank you. We will.
And thank you. Bueno, gràcies per les aportacions de tothom. Jo crec que ha estat molt bé. He tingut la sort de tenir aquesta gent amb nosaltres.
So, you know, we'd like to say thank you to everyone because we're really enjoying this. This is great. And thank you to Joel and Fanny for organizing this and for putting a lot of hard work into this.